Okay, first of all, is this enough light for everyone?
This is good.
Okay, we're gonna go through and I can't see any of you, so.
I'm here.
We'll allow everybody to introduce yourself and tell us why you'd like to get into voiceover. You start, Rena.
I'm Rainey Yeager. I know Jeff from church, and I'm here to take the class, just to kind of learn something new. Maybe get into voiceover down the road, but just kind of also interested in just the process itself and how it all works. I like technical things. I'm geeky.
Okay. Nancy Goodwill, and we know everybody from church, and I'm interested in just learning a little bit more. There's so much more to learn.
But you've already been doing voiceover.
Very little.
That's
Just
sounds.
teensy bit.
You're getting started.
Yes, teensy bit.
I'm Karen Lovett, and I've done a little bit of voiceover years ago, and would like to get into more of it. Just really interested in it.
All right.
I'm Claire Biedenheim. It's like Beethoven. Let's see, I wrote a book and recorded it with Jeff, I guess almost 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Wow.
I know.
Hey.
Okay.
Yeah. And so anyway, I enjoyed it and had a lot of compliments on my voice from everyone. So I just thought I'd come check it out.
And last but not
Me.
least,
I'm Tim Conaway. I used to try to do some photography and videography for Jeff around here and at their old location in particular. And I've got a lot of recording equipment because I'm a musician and can read. So I thought I'd put the two together and give it a try since Jeff's done well.
all right. So that's where we're starting at. And let's see, why do you want to get the voiceover? Okay. The hardest part about starting any type of business is how do I get started? And that's true. I don't care if you're doing voiceover or whatever you're doing. Most people think if they just knew how to get started, you know, I could probably figure the rest out or maybe get a little more help, but if I just knew how to get started. So tonight, that's what we're going to talk about, how to get started. A little story here. About 3 years ago, a lady came in. She called and said she wanted to do a voiceover for a birthday party for a friend. She wasn't going to be able to be there, but she wanted to record a few things. Oh, dang it. And have it played while she was out. So she came in. She had a pretty nice voice. She had a bit of a southern drawl, and but she was super sweet lady. She was in her 70s, and she had been told she had a nice voice, which she did. Everybody at church loved it, and so she wanted to get into voiceover. So someone told her about a voice coach, and then she found some stuff online, and she hired a voice coach, and she paid about $3,000, and he coached her into doing voiceover. So 3 years later, she came in here. She'd never done one project. She didn't have a studio. She didn't know anything about doing voiceover, realistically. What she did learn from a voice coach was the performance aspect of voiceover. And that is, you know, the speed you're talking, how to emphasize specific things, that kind of stuff. Not really how to do any of the actual work or the production. She didn't have any idea how to do that. When she started, she thought, well, people would just call me and I'll go in the studio and record voiceover. It doesn't work like that. First of all, 30 years ago, people may have called you to come in and do voiceover, but now there's this thing called the internet. And with that, nobody calls people to do voiceover. I've had one call, and that's because I called them first. They called me back to come in and do a voiceover at another studio here in town. But generally, when you do voiceover, you do it from your home and you do it online. I mean, you record the voice and you upload it, you know, and you're not uploading it to a client. Like if you're doing something for a craft, you know, you're not working for craft. Technically, you're working for a production company that is producing something for another company, an advertising agency, that is actually working for craft. So what you have to do is make sure that you make that production company happy. You want the end result to be, you want Kraft and that production company to really look good. So you wanna do your best to make sure that they're happy, because if they're happy, then their client's gonna be happy, and chances are they're gonna use you again at some time in the future. So that's the thing you wanna keep in mind. But she spent all this money, and she got a real nice demo out of it. He, in addition to coaching, he produced a demo for her, an audio demo. So she can send that to clients and say, you know, this is my voice, these are projects that I recorded, and not necessarily she got paid for, but she recorded just for the demo. So she did that, and she had a nice sounding demo to send out. But if she got a job, she didn't have a clue how to do it. So she came in here and she talked about that a little bit, and I went over a lot of things with her. And she ended up buying some equipment and getting a studio set up to do voiceover. And unfortunately, shortly after that, she passed away. She didn't get to do any of the work, but at least she finally got to know what it was like to do the work if she'd have had the opportunity.
She had fun.
Exactly. So let's see what else I got on here. That's the story about that. Let's see, deliver, pronounce the words, thread, there again, this will all be available to you when we're finished here. Okay. There is a specific order of things or progression that should be followed to do voiceover. And by following this progression, you can get started quicker doing the work and hopefully save yourself a lot of frustration that many others, including myself, have already gone through. So, for this progression, not everything has to be accomplished or set up on day one, or even the first week, or the first month. But there is a first step. Nancy can attest to this. Nancy decided she would like to get into voiceover, I guess that's been about a year, hasn't it? About a year ago. And she actually, Nancy, this is Claire Wiedenhorn. Do you know who this is?
Oh,
You know
you
who
read
this
my
is?
introduction.
Oh, yes, okay.
She
yes.
narrated that.
Yes, Gene Watson.
Yes,
AKA
yes.
Gene Watson.
Yes.
She was the
Goodness
first,
gracious.
that was her first voiceover,
Wow.
was to do that.
Beautiful
Well,
job.
thank you so much.
I had forgotten about that. And this is the lady's book that you narrated the introduction.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
That's amazing.
So, and did you proof that book? Yeah, she
Oh,
did
that's
proofing
right,
on your
yeah,
book
sure
too.
enough.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So anyway, that was her. But she has been getting started into voiceover, and because of some, well, first of all, she was in a bad car accident, so she had to kind of slow things way down.
Yeah.
But because of that, she's been able to take things at a slower pace, like on this. Not everything has to be done right off the bat. She's getting into it, and she has progressed very nicely and very far. And she's just finishing up a tour for the town we live in, Henryville, Indiana. And on that tour, there'll be stops along the way where you can turn on your phone.
Have a guided tour.
Yeah, guided tour. And if you want to take notes, that's fine, but all this will be emailed to you.
I am a visual learner, and
That's
it
fine.
helps me to
That's
look at
fine.
it
Too.
and write it
Do
down.
you have
too.
enough light?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway, like I said, there's not a specific, there's specific order, but it doesn't have to be done all at once. Okay. First thing is there are two sides to this. One is your performance, which I was talking about, which is how you deliver what you're saying. And the next part is the technical part, which is the quality of your delivery, of your delivered performance. That's what we're gonna talk about tonight. If your performance is good, let's say you're doing an audition, and virtually everything you do, you audition for. Because if the client, like my first good paid gig, I auditioned. I called a place in town and, yeah, hey guys, ever need a male voiceover talent, give me a call. And then like the next day they called me, believe it or not. Well, I'm glad you called, because we just happened to have a client and he's looking for like 10 auditions. They wanted somebody with a deep voice. And we need like 10 auditions, so, send something in. So I sent them my audition, and about a week later, they called me and said, the client liked your voice, so we'd like you to come in and record this. I said, well, I've got my own studio, I can do it here. No, they wanna come in, want you to come in, because they're gonna come in too. They'll have somebody here, and then there'll be somebody from Chicago on the phone with directing. So, okay, so I went over there and did the voiceover, but I had to audition to get that. Now, let's say you do a voiceover for Kraft food, and you're doing it for the media company, and you've got that voiceover down. You know that when I get home at night, the first thing I want to do is see macaroni and cheese on the table, because I love macaroni and cheese, and my wife makes it so good, and the Kraft makes it so easy to do, and that's a pretty good delivery. But what if I had recorded that right now, which I did, and you could hear this fan running, which you will, and you could hear them laughing over there, which you will. I tapped the floor once with my cane, you'll hear that. So you send that to the media company, and the first thing they do is, no, there's no way we could use this person. First of all, they obviously don't have enough experience to know that just because your delivery's good, your audio has to be at least as good, actually better. Because if you make a performance and they say, boy, we really like this guy's voice, but when he says that last Kraft macaroni and cheese, if you could just put a little more smile in his voice, it'd just be perfect. And you're going to end up doing that 10 times, because the first time is never good enough, and a lot of times you're going to end up using the first one you did anyway. But that's the way it goes. So you go back and you do, Kraft macaroni and cheese is the greatest, and you redo that. But if you send a track over that doesn't sound good because it's got background noise, or maybe you heard a train in the background, which has happened, and you're not going to get the gig. There's just no way. They're not going to hire you. So the first thing you need to do is to have a quiet environment to record in. Now, quiet environment means quiet. Everybody just listen for like the next 10 seconds and tell me what you hear when it's over. Okay. What could you hear, Tim?
The fan and the bass from the music.
Okay.
Traffic.
Traffic.
Traffic in the fan.
Traffic in the fan. Yeah.
Voices.
Yeah. Voices. Okay. This room, for a recording studio, it's not super quiet. There's a difference between recording music and recording voice and dialogue. For music, you got somebody in here with a set of drums, you will never, ever, ever hear that traffic, because the mic's gonna be turned down, because the drums are loud, so you gotta turn that microphone down, so it picks up that drum, but it picks up virtually nothing else. But when you're doing dialogue, your microphone is turned up, because you don't talk near as loud as you would sing. When I sing, it's loud. When I talk, it's soft. So you have to turn the microphone way up to get your voice, to get enough signal on the microphone recording that it's clean and you don't have background noise. So when you turn that up, you have to have an even more quiet room. This room works great for bands. And I've recorded some videos in here where Cara Soletto came in and we set up a green screen. We put a microphone on her like this, and we set up a shotgun microphone just as a backup. And she recorded a lot of stuff in here, several projects in here. And it worked out great. Cara Soletto is a dynamic speaker. She talks real loud when she talks. Plus, we know how to get rid of some of the background noise. But anyway, that worked out real well. But if you're recording at home, and this is something Nancy went through a long process of getting it down, you have to have a quiet environment. Now, another thing is that lady, this is another thing I was gonna tell you, that lady thought that once she got, like I said, she would be going into studios. So if you think that I only wanna record in studios, that's great. And there's a chance that once in a while you could record in the studio. But the reality is, by the time you pay studio prices, you know, we charge, for that, it would be $75 an hour for you to come in, and we have a 1 hour minimum. So it's gonna cost you $75 just to come in and record your voiceover. Maybe you're getting paid $100, maybe you're getting paid $500, but 75 of that right off the bat's gotta go to pay this. So you need to set up a studio at home where you can do this at home. And when you're doing that, there's a lot of places that you can set up a studio in your home that perhaps you've thought about, perhaps you haven't. There was a guy in Chicago that lost his job. He'd been on the radio for years, and he decided that, you know, he thought he could do voiceover. He'd never done actual voiceover, but, well, other than like radio announcements. So he set up a studio in his closet. He had a walk-in closet with clothes hanging, and he just put a microphone in there and used that as a studio. That's a good place. First of all, your room needs to be relatively small. In my home, I have what's called a whisper room, which actually Tim helped me get. Remember that?
Dayton.
Dayton, Ohio. We drove up there and got it. He drove up there, I just rode. But he helped me get that loaded up, and we took it to my house, and I got it all set up. It's 4 feet by 4 feet. Now, 3.5 feet by 5 feet would be better, but this is what I found. 4 feet by 4 feet. I paid $1,900 for it. It was about $4,500 new, but I found one for $1,900 and I bought it. So 4 feet by 4 feet, it's real close, and it's not soundproof. It's about as quiet as this is. So if you've got a place that's about as quiet as this, you can make it work. So if you hear a little traffic once in a while, you can compensate for that. If you got people talking that you hear like that, you need to tell them to shut up. But here we are very close to the ambulance dispatch, who's just right around the corner down on Preston. And during the day, ambulances go through here. Some days there'll be 8 or 10, some days there's none. But in this room, when they go by, you hear it. Even for music, we might have to stop that, because it would be loud. Now, in the vocal booth in that room, and in another studio that we have, an ambulance goes by, I never know it. It is virtually, totally, almost totally soundproof. Your room doesn't have to be soundproof, but it does have to be very quiet. And if it's not, there are some things you can do. In addition to being quiet, one thing that you want to do in that room is make sure that you have materials on the wall, possibly on the floor, if it's a hardwood floor like this. If you notice in here, we've got rugs every place. And the reason we have those rugs everywhere is because mostly this room gets used for drums, people playing live drums. As we move the rugs around, the drums sound different. They bounce off this floor. If I'm standing right here, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's an ever so slight echo or reverb in my voice right here. And if I move over here, it's not there. So there's two places in this room where there's a real slight echo, because it's your voice or your sound hits a brick wall, a hard ceiling, a hard floor. Some places on the wall are hard in that window, and it bounces back real quick. So what you do is what we've done. We've made all these black panels that we put up, and about 99% of that echo, and that's called reflection, where the sound bounces off and comes back, has been deadened. We can control part of that. Sometimes you want a little bit of that, but we can control that with the movement of these rugs, putting them in different areas. And around the room, you may have noticed, and you may not be able to see it now, but there are some panels setting up that are made of foam rubber. You can position those in different places, and you can take all of that out or position them in places where you can allow some of that to come back in. And that's what we do in this room. So you can do the same in your closet, or maybe you have an extra bedroom, or you have a basement. Basements are great because they are generally more quiet. Or maybe you have just an extra room someplace. But if you have an extra room, you can set up in there. You'll need something to sit on, a small table to set your equipment on. And then, if you've got clothes hanging in there, you've already got magic going on, because your voice is gonna hit that and it's not gonna bounce back. So that's gonna deaden the sound a lot. Now, if you have a small room where you don't have that, or let's say you have a bedroom, you could set up in a corner of a bedroom. You could take like a moving blanket or a quilt and put it on the wall. Put it in the corner, get some hangers like those kind that stick on the wall that you can remove, and hang it up in front of you so that when you're speaking, your voice is gonna hit that, but it's not gonna be bouncing back at you. And the back of you could be open. So if you just had a corner, you could face that corner or close to the corner, and you could possibly work like that. And you just have to try it out. Nancy, where's the setup in your home?
It's in the guest room closet.
Okay, and about how big is that?
Big enough for my desk.
Okay, okay. And you have blankets or quilts or pillows or something in there?
Yes.
Well, I've heard her recording, and at first it had some noise, and then she worked on it and it had a little less noise, and she worked on it and it had less noise, and then I heard the last one and it's virtually noise-free. So, now, a little bit of noise is sometimes acceptable because we're gonna put music behind this anyway, if that's what's going on. But that's not always the case. If you're doing an audiobook, that's not the case. But a little bit of noise sometimes can be acceptable, but I mean a little. And I'm not talking about horns honking or a dog barking. I'm talking about what is called room noise, and we'll get into that a little bit later too. But like the ambient sound of this room, if you just came in here with a microphone and stood still and just held the microphone for 30 seconds and recorded it, you would record what is called room tone. And sometimes you use room tone when you're doing audiobooks. For commercials and stuff, you generally cut all that out. But if your noise floor is low enough, while you're speaking, you can't hear. Like there's a car going by, but if I was recording in here, my voice would probably be loud enough, well, you'd hear that, but for most part, you wouldn't notice that, except between words or between sentences. So then we do a little work on that we'll talk about later, where you can get rid of that or suppress it, which is what Nancy's done to a great success. And so that's the next thing you need to do, is get a quiet environment, and that could be, and preferably would be in your house or someplace you have access to on a daily basis. When you're doing auditions, another thing that you need to be aware of is that if you're doing auditions for commercials or reads where they're gonna be like 30 seconds or a minute, there's different places you can find auditions, but generally, the client will put the audition out for, let's say, for 5 hours or 8 hours or 24 hours. So you've got to hurry and get in there. I work on a website called Voice123. That's what's called a pay-to-play website. I pay $400 a year, and I get anywhere from 1 to 30 auditions a day that I can choose to do if I want to. And some of them pay $100, some of them pay $5,000. So they're just all over the place. And that's not the audition, that's if you get the job. But when I get that audition, it'll say, we want 20 auditions. So after they get about 20 auditions, Voice123 will look at it, and then they go 25, then they go 30, but then they'll cut it off. Or they'll say, we're gonna leave this open for 24 hours, and we want 50 auditions. So it'll either be open for 24 hours, or if they get 50 or quite a few more, then it'll get cut off anyway. So you've only got so long to audition for these jobs. So you wanna get in where you can get them done in the morning. I get up at 4:30 in the morning, and I come downstairs and I make some coffee, and I get my phone out, I take my cholesterol medicine, my heartburn medicine, stuff we all take when we're old, except for Tim, Nancy.
Sorry.
But anyway, and then I go into the vocal booth and I start work. And by 9 o'clock, man, I've usually got all my auditions done even before then, a lot of days. And I'm already narrating an audiobook. So, you wanna get started early, if you can, or get started late. But as soon as you get started, you need to keep going, so you can get those done. Cause that's the way most of that work comes in. Not all of it, but a good portion of it. So let's see what's next on this agenda. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, I'm either going way over the head or I'm explaining it real well. So we'll just assume that's not. Let's see, quiet environment, boom, okay. Okay, the other thing is in your studio, you can use acoustical foam, or you can use, if you don't have blankets or something like that, or a quilt or afghan, you can buy a mattress cover or mattress pad. They look kind of funky because they're always yellow. Well, sometimes they're blue. You can actually use those. It's similar to the foam rubber we use here. It's not as good. The foam rubber we use here is from a company called Auralex, and they specifically make foam for acoustic use. It absorbs more, it reflects more than what you buy, but the other stuff will work, and it's inexpensive. It's a good way to get started. You might even find some at the Goodwill if you wanna look there. I don't know if I'd wanna get somebody old mattress pad, but, you know, you could do it. But, you could use that. I don't know if, Tim's probably not old enough for this, maybe not even Nancy, you all may not be, but years ago, little country radio stations would use the old egg flats that were made out of cardboard. And they don't really absorb the sound, but the idea behind that is that when sound hits it, it doesn't bounce straight back, it bounces someplace else, so it doesn't come right back into the microphone. And you used to see those on the walls, in fact, on Hee Haw, they had a thing set up, a guy in there had those egg trays in there. Yeah, and those will work to deflect the sound. Okay, closet, extra bedroom, basement must be quiet, doesn't have to be totally dead, but it needs to be, dead, I should have said, doesn't have to be totally soundproof. It does need to be dead sounding and extremely quiet. If you don't have a quiet space to start with, it's going to be extremely hard to produce a great sounding performance. Software to reduce noise and background is also available, correct, Nancy? Which we'll discuss later. And I went to the recording studio, we already talked about that. Usually you work from your own home. Another advantage of having a studio at home, in addition to meeting quick deadlines and being able to get your stuff out quick, is that you can rehearse in your home. The first thing you're gonna need to get a job is a demo of your voice. And so you create a demo, and I can tell you how to do it yourself. We do demos here, but you should do your first one on your own if possible. The next week, redo it. The next week, redo it. The next week, redo it. And you'll find that on the fourth week, it's probably better than the first one you did. Because the more you practice, the better you're gonna get, just like anything else, you know. So redo it. Now, equipment that you're gonna need, in addition to quiet space and sound treatment, and you don't need to write this down because I'll send it to you. You're gonna need a pop filter for a microphone. And that's just a piece of, that's a thing that usually in front of the microphone, sometimes it mounts right on the microphone. Sometimes you see them, they're called windscreens. It's not exactly the same thing, but it'll work. But it's usually round, and what that does, when you speak, it deflects air out, so you don't get, like when you pop your P's, mostly. Okay, you'll need a microphone stand, audio cables, an audio interface, a computer, headphones, audio recording, editing software called a DAW, or Digital Audio Workstation. Okay, quiet space. This can be a room or a closet, we've already talked about that. Main thing is you want to keep the outside noises from coming into your recording space. Now, one of the outside noises that a lot of people forget about is the thing everyone mentioned they heard, and that's that fan running on that thing. Well, your computer has a fan in it too, like this computer has a fan. Every computer just about has a fan. Some of the brand new laptops do not, but most others have fans. If you've got a little bitty space and that fan, like the fan on this computer, you don't even hear. But if you put that in a 4 foot by 4 foot space that's closed up, you hear it. And if you hear it, your microphone picks it up. So your computer generally cannot be in the same room with you. And what I've done at my house and what we've done over here is the computer sits outside and there's a hole through the wall where a cable comes through to hook the keyboard and a monitor. You can get a wireless keyboard, and you could get you can run a VGA cable or an HDMI cable for 20, 25, even maybe 50 feet, a long way away. USB will run about 15 feet. That's as long as I've been able to get it running and still work. But you can use a wireless keyboard. So that way you can have inside your vocal booth or your recording space, you've got a keyboard and a monitor that you need, and then your computer's out here, so you don't hear that. So I'll show you how that sets up. Okay, big blankets, we talked about that. Foam padding, we talked about that. Oralex.com. Whisper room. I know where there's a whisper room for sale right now. That's a really good deal. $1,300. If I had the money, I'd buy it and sell mine because it's 4 foot by 6 foot. Just a little bit bigger. 4 foot by 4 foot works, but boy, it sure would be nice to have 6 or 8 more inches to lean back. So 4 foot by 4 foot's crowded. Okay, pop filter. This prevents plosives. When you say, basically when you say P's, what my cursor go there it is. Okay. And it doesn't prevent them all the way, but it does diminish them greatly. Another thing you can do is hold a pencil directly in front of your mouth, but it's kind of hard to do any work like that. But that actually works really, really good, even better than a pop filter. But it's almost impossible to do. Okay, just about any kind of pop filter will work, and pop filter will either mount directly to the microphone, and I'll show you one of those, or it'll be a round thing, looks like what they used to use for cross stitch or embroidery, because some of them are exactly that. And it's a little gooseneck that hooks to your microphone stand, and you put it between your mouth and the microphone. Let's see, if you can get one to mount right on the microphone, it takes up less space. And believe me, in a vocal booth, space is a premium. You'll need a good quality microphone. Now, good quality is very, forgot the word I'm looking for here.
Relative.
Relative, thank you. Relative to the amount of money you make. However, a guy that I have talked to a couple of times that's done voiceover, he makes about $400,000 a year, which I don't make, nothing compared to that. So he started off with a $60 microphone, a Marshall MXL microphone. So you don't have to have the greatest microphone in the world. I would recommend not getting the greatest microphone in the world to start off with. I would get something for $100 or $50 or somewhere in that range. What microphone did you start off with, Nancy?
$60 one.
And it sounds great. Now, she recorded your thing. You came in here to record that, didn't you? Yeah, in here on a $4,500 microphone with a $3,500 microphone preamp.
No wonder it sounded
So,
so good.
and, it is going to sound a little better. But realistically, the more expensive microphones, if you're singing, you can generally tell a difference. If you're singing, you can generally tell a pretty good difference. But for spoken word, an inexpensive microphone for $100 versus a microphone for $4,500, this much difference in price, but there's probably about this much difference in what the average person will hear. And that, what the studio guys will hear, they may hear a little difference, but most other people will never even know the difference. In fact, this guy said for 5 years he did national projects with that $60 microphone. So it can be done. The equipment is not everything, it's knowing how to use it. But these are some microphones. Rode microphone, PreSonus makes microphones, Yeti, AKG, Electro Voice, Shure, and then the Big Daddy Neumann. But these range anywhere from, you can buy microphones online from $60, like I said, to $4,500. But the only thing you need to be aware of is that you need what's called a large diaphragm microphone. And the microphones that you hold in your hand, They could work, and they will work, but they're not ideal for doing voiceover. You're wanting a microphone that has a larger diaphragm that usually mounts on a stand. The microphone like this, and here again, there's some advantages. Most microphones that you hold in your hand are cardioid microphones. They have a pickup pattern that's kind of like this. If you're speaking right here, you're still gonna pick up a little over here, every microphone will. But you've gotta hold it pretty close. The main thing is you need to have the microphone about this close to your mouth, and it always needs to be about this close to your mouth. If you use a large diaphragm microphone, you can put it this close, you can put it this close, you can put it there, you can put it there, and it sounds almost the same no matter where you put it, as long as it's within reason. So if your microphone's farther away, it picks up less breath sounds than while you're speaking. If your microphone's right here, it picks up more breath sounds while you're speaking. So if you've got a large diaphragm microphone, you can place it farther away in what they call an off axis, so it's not directly in front of you. You always want it just slightly to the side. And you can put it a little farther away, it's gonna pick your voice up, and it has a larger diaphragm in it that picks up this sound, so it almost always has a better sound than a microphone that's handheld. Not 100% of the time, but about 95% of the time. Now, there's a couple different types of microphones. When you're speaking into a microphone, that signal goes down a cable, but you have to have some way to get that to the computer. Some of the microphones today have a USB interface built into the microphone. So you can plug a USB cable, just like you would use for your printer, into your microphone and plug that into your computer. To date, most of those microphones are not as high quality as microphones that don't have that built in. That doesn't mean they won't work. I think yours is a USB microphone, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they'll definitely work, but they don't have as high quality sound as a microphone that uses what's called an XLR cable. And I was gonna show you one of those, and I forgot to bring one over. But it's just a cable that plugs in. It's actually, I'll turn the lights on, it's what's plugged into this right here. And this is an interface. So if you use a microphone with an XLR cable, that plugs into a device called an interface, which is what this is. And when you turn the lights on, I'll show you that. The microphone goes into that converts the signal from analog or electrical into a digital signal, and then this plugs from a USB cable to your computer. Now, the reason most USB microphones don't sound as good as XLR microphones is because most microphones, most interfaces like this that have the USB connection to the computer with the XLR input, they have way higher quality analog to digital converters, which is what converts that analog signal to something your computer can see. They spend a whole lot more money on the converter for that, to make it a signal that your computer see. In fact, the converters in this microphone and that interface probably cost more to manufacture than the entire microphone with the built-in converter. So they generally sound better. And there again, it depends on the mic, and it depends on how you use it, but they're generally gonna sound a little better. So that's what that is. Next is a microphone stand. Now you can get a floor microphone stand, which if I had the lights back on, we could see. It's just some microphone stands on the floor, a stand. Some of them have tripod legs, and some of them have a round base. And they'll come up, ever so far, and then you put a gooseneck or what's called a boom arm on it to get the microphone over to your mouth. Of course, Tim knows all this already, but
Shock mount.
yeah. On top of that, you'll want a shock mount for the microphone so that if it gets bumped, it doesn't pick up that noise. Actually, the shock mount, even when you speak into a microphone, it's picking up a slight vibration from your voice. And if it doesn't have a shock mount, some microphones, it causes them to create a small amount of noise. So you usually use a shock mount. In addition to that, you can also use what's called a desk mount. And that will usually clamp on the side of your desk, and then it's got an arm that comes up and then over, and it's spring loaded, so you can, give it this, move it around and hang it down right in front of you. Or you can use a desk mic stand, which is just a small stand that'll sit there and it'll come up maybe this high, and the microphone points to your mouth that way. So there's different types, and it depends on how much room you have. If you have enough room, you can put a floor stand in, and then you can also mount other things on that, which I'll show you in a bit. But in mine, at home, I have the desk mount where it comes up with the arm that swings over in front of me. That works for me. Okay, next is, let's see, the cable. To go from your microphone, if you have one of these, you need an XLR cable. It's a standard, it's just called an XLR mic cable. They come in 1 foot, 3 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot, 10 foot, 15 foot, 20 foot. You can get any length you need. You want the shorter the better. It depends on how far away your interface is as to how long the cable you'll need. But the shorter the run on the cable, the better off you are. Keeps it out of the way for one thing. So if you're running a USB cable from your microphone, you want that as short as possible. Most USB cables are 1 meter, which is just about 3 feet. So that would work fine if that'll reach your computer. The audio interface, which that is this, we just talked about. And those range anywhere from $100 to thousands of dollars. But this particular, I like Steinberg interfaces. I have 3 of them. This is a 4-channel interface. I can plug 4 microphones into it, and I can actually plug 2 other instruments into it in the back. You don't need anything like that. To get started, you could use a 1-channel or a 2-channel interface if you decide to get a microphone that's not USB. Now, when you get an interface, if you buy the Steinberg interface, it comes with free DAW software called Cubase, which is what I use. There's all kinds of software out there. It comes with that for free. If you buy a PreSonus interface, it comes with a free program called Studio One. So some of the times when you buy an interface, you get the free recording software. And we'll talk about that a little more in just a few minutes.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So I have a Yeti, which is the one that
Yes.
goes straight into the
Yeah,
computer.
USB, yeah.
So is there a way of running that into an interface that would improve?
There is not.
So it's just always gonna go straight?
Yeah, yeah, and that's fine. I mean, that'd be a great mic to get started with. In fact, that was one of the microphones I had listed on. It was a Yeti, or I thought I did anyway.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And, let's see. PreSonus, Steinberg, Focusrite, Behringer. Those are all companies that make interfaces for your computer. So, headphones. Generally, when you're starting off, you want to use headphones. You can use speakers, but there's some advantages to having headphones. If you're doing audiobooks, you'll virtually only always want to use headphones, because 99% of the people that listen to audiobooks listen through headphones or earbuds. So you want to hear it the way they hear it. In addition to that, when you've got earphones on, headphones, that are right up in your ears, as opposed to a speaker that's this far away, you can just hear things better. That's just all there is to it. You can hear what you recorded better. Now, if you use those little bitty earbuds, you may not, but you want to get some actual headphones. The better headphones you get, generally the better they sound. However, I have a pair of $60 headphones, which is right here, which for headphones, that's not a lot of money. I love these. They sound great. I've also got a pair of Sennheiser, who makes those DT770 Pros?
I don't know. Buyer?
Beyer, yeah. You know, they're about $200. And I really don't see where they sound better. They sound different than these, but I like these just as well. But you can do with any set of headphones. The thing is on headphones that you have to be aware of, and you'll want to take into consideration, especially if you're like me and Nancy, and you, and sometimes probably you that wear glasses.
I lost them.
And that is, the smaller this is, the more it hurts your ear after a while. Because sometimes you'll be wearing these headphones for a long time. And the smaller it is. Generally, the tighter it is on your glasses. After a while, it just hurts so bad, I just like to scream. So I have a pair of AKG K240s. They're not an expensive headphone, but they're about that big around. Buddy, they cover the whole year. And you can wear them for hours. And they stay pretty comfortable. The bad thing is, they're not real tight, so they have a tendency to kind of, you get used to that, but they kind of move around a little bit. Whereas these are tight. These sound really good, but they're a little bit tight, and after about an hour, I have to take these off. The AKGs, on the other hand, you can wear a long, long time, but they're slightly loose, they just don't tighten up like these do on your head. And as you move around, sometimes you hear a little bit of noise. Your microphone doesn't pick that up, but you do, and you either get used to it or you just throw them away. You can't get used to the sound.
I was gonna ask you if they were noise canceling, but that doesn't sound.
You don't need noise canceling. If you're in a place that needs noise canceling, it's too loud. It's too loud to record.
But you do want closed back.
Sometimes you do.
Oh, sometimes you use open?
I like the open back because if somebody's trying to get my attention, I can hear them.
Right.
But he makes a good point there and something I hadn't thought about.
For tracking even?
No, I'm talking about just for the voiceover.
Right.
They make what's called open back and closed back headphones. Now, if you're singing, you always want what's called closed back. And what that means is that when you put them on, they shut out almost all the outside noise from coming in. That's a closed back. An open back, you can still hear things around you. Now, if you're singing in a vocal booth like that, you always want closed back because you're listening to music through these headphones and it's gonna be loud. And your microphone will pick that up if it's an open back, because that sound comes out. Closed back keeps all that sound in here and doesn't let it out into your microphone. If you're just speaking, you generally don't have music going in the background, so that doesn't come into play. However, if you're listening to yourself and you do what's called punch-in recording, and it was real loud, it could. And what punch-in recording is I'm recording a sentence and I've gotten up to one part and I need to start over. I got in a sentence and I'm listening to one part and I stop. So what you do is you rewind about a second and then to where you made a mistake and you do what's called punch-in recording. And then hit the play button and your playback starts like at the beginning of that sentence or maybe 1 or 2 seconds before that. So you hear that part coming in and then you just keep going like you never even stopped. And if it's loud enough and you have open back headphones, then you could hear that on the microphone. But if you got it up that loud, you should probably turn it down. So, and then a lot of times when I'm recording audiobooks, I don't even wear headphones. I have a speaker set up in my vocal booth that I can hear, and the only time I hear it is if I make a mistake and have to go back for that playback. But it stops the playback at the moment the recording starts, so it doesn't pick that up. And you don't hear yourself speak. Generally, you could set it up so that you hear yourself while you're speaking. I don't recommend that because you end up listening to yourself so much that you forget, oh, I'm supposed to do this like this, but I sound so good. Oh, I like this. And so I don't even wear headphones when I'm doing audiobooks. I do for the short reads, 30 seconds, because you have to immediately go back and listen. Okay, well that's the headphones. And you can use a speaker, but I would recommend the headphones. And then after you've listened to it on headphones, you could listen to it on speakers, but you want to use headphones first, especially when you're getting started. These are different headphones, AKG, Testcam. These are Audio Technica. You can use Sony, just about anything. You can use earbuds, but realistically, you'd probably want something over your ear to hear better. And, I don't know what time it was we got started here, but we still got a ways to go if that's all right with everybody. Okay. Computer. You can use a Mac computer or you can use a Windows computer. Doesn't make any difference. All software that I'm aware of runs on both. So it doesn't matter. For voiceover, unlike music production, you don't have to have a computer with a whole lot of horsepower or processing power. You're only usually recording one track and playing back one track at a time, so it doesn't take a real powerful computer to do that. So if you've got a computer already, most likely you can use that. And like I said, it doesn't matter if it's Windows or if it's a Mac, that makes no difference. Now, software. The software that you need to get can be very expensive or it can be free. Do you use Audacity?
Mm-hmm.
Audacity is a free program that I would recommend anybody to start with. It's free, and the good thing about it is it's free, and did I mention it is free? It runs on a Mac or PC, and it will take you a long way to get to your goal of doing voiceover. You can download it and install it and use it to record with. It will recognize a USB microphone. Have you done any recording yet?
Yeah,
Me?
Yeah.
I've done a little bit, yes.
Do you have what software are you using?
I'm just using GarageBand on the Mac.
You can use GarageBand. GarageBand is not gonna be real good for voiceover in the long
Not for
run.
professional stuff, this is more for my Facebook, my YouTube channel.
Okay, well,
And so-
yeah, even at that, you may find Audacity quite a bit easier to use than
Okay,
GarageBand,
good.
because it's laid out more for this. But, it's free if you wanna try it out.
Oh, yeah.
Are you
Oh,
using, you're using the Mac then?
Yes.
Yeah. You can use that. You can use a program called Twisted Wave, Adobe Audition. Lots of voiceover guys use Adobe Audition. It has a lot of things in it that are pretty good for that. I've used it a few times. You can use Reaper. You can use Cubase, which is what I use and I prefer. Studio One or Pro Tools. Pro Tools is great. It's a little more expensive, but they all work pretty much the same. The difference between most of these, one reason I use Cubase as opposed to all the others, in our studios here, we use Pro Tools. Cubase has what's called macros, keyboard shortcuts that you can use to automate a lot of things. When you're just doing voiceover and you're doing a 30-second spot, there's not a whole lot that you have to do. I do audiobooks. The last audiobook I edited was 17 hours long. So that's a long way to go. Now, there are certain things that you do over and over and over and over. Like, for example, this guy's breathing is so loud that I have to go in and take almost every breath sound and reduce the volume of it. So I have to isolate that sound, then I have to separate it from the rest of the track, then I have to reduce that sound, then I want to rewind back about a second and listen to it to make sure I got it down enough, or not too much, and then keep going. So that would take about 10 different keystrokes. Or with Cubase, you can write a macro and you hit W and it's done. It does all that and rewinds and then just plays on from that point. And you can write a macro for just about anything. So it speeds up the process. However, when you buy an interface like this, it comes with Cubase AI or Cubase Elements. That version of Cubase, the free version or the least expensive, does not have macros. You have to get to a higher pay, which is, I think it's like $179, and it does macros. So there's pros and cons to everything. However, to get started with, a program like GarageBand is fine, and Audacity is also fine, and you can go a long way with that. Now, the next thing is, computer should be placed outside your environment. We already got that. Noise, DJ keyboard, we've already gone through all that. Plugins, that's what we're going to talk about next. One of the most useful plugins is from a company called Waves, and it is called NS1, Noise Suppression 1. Nancy, tell us what that's done for you.
Well, it helped, well, you know.
I know, but they don't know. Can you explain it, or would you like me to?
You go ahead.
Okay. Let's say that you have a room like this that you're recording in. It's pretty quiet, but it's not real quiet. It's definitely not dead or soundproof. So But this would be quiet enough that you could do some voiceover work most of the time. If you set up like in a corner or over here, and you took some of those panels we've got, and you made a little space around you, you could do voiceover work in this room. You're still gonna have some noise, and that's not acceptable. But there is a plug-in, and what a plug-in is like inside your recording software, and I'm gonna show you that. I'm using Cubase to record this on as we speak. This is Cubase. And let's see, recording error. Well, you know what?
It's inevitable.
Inevitable. It stopped. Oh my goodness, I only got like 5 minutes of this. So,
Thank goodness you got that.
thank goodness I've got the extra. So, anyway, this is what I've recorded. I don't know if you can see that or not, but this, oh yeah, you can see it on screen, I forgot. This is what I have recorded. Not much, but I got some. Now, if that's got noise in it, when you make a recording like this, some of the things you can do to it are like what's called equalization. You can add bass to it, or you can add treble to it. Everybody pretty much knows what that is when you add bass and treble. Well, there's other things you can do to that. You can add delay, or echo, or reverb, or you can make it sound like you're talking in a little speaker or something. You know, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. Now, when you get a program like Cubase, it comes with a lot of different things to do that. You can also use what's called a compressor to make your sound more professional sounding. There's other things it does, but in a nutshell, that's kind of what it does, smoother sounding. But you can also do things to reduce noise. And Waves NS1 is one of those things. What it does is, in this matter of fact, I have it here. So let's just pull that up, and I'll show you what that looks like. We'll go into inserts, and we'll put, I don't remember what it's listed under. I have lots of plugins under tools. So oh, I'm not sure I have it on this computer. But what it does, restoration, is it takes noise out of your recording. It can take it all out, or it can reduce it way down to where it makes it usable. And I don't seem to have it on this computer, but the background noise that you hear, it won't take that bass drum out, but like the room tone I was telling you about earlier, it takes the volume of that down. Okay, let's do that. Okay, it'll take the volume of that room noise down to where you can barely hear it. Now, when you're doing audiobooks, the first thing you do in the room you're recording that day is you record 30 seconds. You sit in the room with the microphone on, and you sit there and you hold your breath for 30 seconds and you hit record. And 30 seconds later you stop. And that's what's called room tone. When you listen to audiobooks, and we did that for Claire, we sampled that, between each word and before this sentence starts, you hear a slight, if you notice it, it's ambient sound. It's just what the room sounds like. And if you take all that out, some people don't like that because between each word it's just dead silent. It doesn't sound natural. So you leave a little of that in there. If you have to take it out between words, you record that, and then you can paste it back in on places where you had to take it out. Or what I generally do is if I'm doing an audiobook and the longest chapter is an hour and a half long, then I've got one track up here with the audio that I recorded, which is what you see here. And if I can find my cursor, I'd show you. This, that's the audio waveform that I recorded. And then I'll take that room tone, which would look kind of similar to that, on another track, and I'll copy and paste that till I've got a whole hour of it, or however long I need. And I'll set it up so that the first time I do that, I crossfade from the first take to the next, so it doesn't go click, 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 but you crossfade that. And then if you listen to it, if you got a sound in there, a bump or something, you wanna take that out, crossfade that back in. So then you make one track that's just that entire hour or hour and a half long, however long you need it. And then on your track up top, let's say that between this section, let's say right here, in that section there was I bumped the mic stand or something, and I wanted to delete that, so I could just cut that out, and then I could take some of that room tone and paste it in there, or what I do is I just leave the room tone down here turned at whatever the volume it needs to be, and I leave that the whole time, because anytime there's a dead space, you hear that room tone. In spaces like this, where they're like between words, the room tone's there, but it's not any louder than the track below it, so you don't even know it. So that saves you a lot of time, and it makes your recording sound natural. Now, when you do short spots, like 30 seconds and a minute, sometimes you'll do that. Sometimes you can cut all that out. It just depends on what the project's for. But if you leave the room tone in there, it generally never hurts. So you can do that. And what NS1 does is take, like if your room tone is real loud, it will turn that down. So it not only turns it down between words, it actually takes part of that out while you're speaking, but it doesn't hardly mess with your vocals, so your vocals still sound almost identical, but they don't have that noise, because sometimes if you hear somebody recording, you can hear them speaking, but you can also hear this noise with it. And NS1 can take a lot of that out. It can take all of it out, but if it takes it all out, usually it makes your voice start to sound a little funny. It gets what artifacts in there, and you don't want that. But you can turn it on and adjust it to where it takes that out, but still leaves your voice sounding virtually unchanged at all. And so that is a great thing to do, is use that plugin. And you can buy that from Waves. I don't know how much it costs, but they always have a sale, and eventually you're gonna find it for $29.95. And that'll be the best $30 you've ever spent.
Just a real novice question.
Sure.
But so if you do the recording, you do the 30-second recording of the room,
Mhm.
and let's say I'm using GarageBand,
Uh-huh,
and so that's one track.
right.
Then how do I go back and start at the beginning to add my second track? I've not done
Yes.
more than one track.
Yes. Now you just set up another track.
And just set on top of that one.
Yes, and you can leave that track turned off, or you could even do that recording at last if you wanted to, after it was all
And
over.
then add it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in Audacity, can you do 2 tracks at a time in there? I've forgotten.
You can, but I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah.
You set up a stereo and do it like a left and right, and use one as one track, one's the other track. Yeah. What I would do in GarageBand is I would record my voiceover, and then on the same day, in the same situation, I would go back at some point and record that 30 seconds of audio tone, and then just mute that while you're doing the rest of it.
Okay.
And then when you're done, you copy and paste that wherever you need it.
Gotcha.
Is how you do that. But yeah, that's all there is to it.
Thank you.
You are most welcome. Okay, now, there's lots of other plugins that you can buy. And after you get going, you'll find out that, man, I really need to use a compressor. I need to use a tiny bit of EQ, and I need to use a noise gate because my space might be a little bit loud. And what a noise gate does is, while you're speaking, the noise gate does nothing, but as soon as you shut up, it turns all your input off, so you don't record sound coming in the microphone. It doesn't really turn that off because you still record it, but it shuts it down so that you don't hear it. And then as soon as you start speaking, it turns back on. Now you have to adjust that, and I'm sure Tim's been through this before, but you have to adjust it so that if you don't have it set right, it'll cut off the very beginning of your sentence, like, yeah, just like, and at the end of the word, like, it's a surprise. It might chop the end of that S off. So you have to adjust it. And then once you figure out your setting, then you would use it that way every time. The other thing is a de-esser that you might want to use. get a lot of sibilance. You can use a de-esser, it will take that out. Doesn't change your voice virtually any. A limiter is another thing you might use. And if you're doing voiceovers, you wanna have everything, there's not a lot of dynamics in voiceover. I mean, hey, come on down to, you know, if you're getting real loud, you're probably gonna stay loud for the whole commercial. If you're not real loud, you're probably not gonna be real loud for the whole commercial. So your voice range is gonna be in this or this, but it's gonna be that way pretty much the whole time. The problem is, as you get louder, sometimes you have a tendency to go real loud and distort the mic. So you wanna limit that so that it doesn't go so loud that you get a distortion sound. Now, that has to do with adjusting your input gain also. But on the output, you can overdrive the output, and if you can use a limiter and keep that volume from getting up there loud enough to distort on the way it sounds. Another thing that is really useful, that at some point you might want to look into, is called isotope elements. And that is a hardware or software package that has 4 different products in it. It has a product called RX, Ozone, Nectar, and Neutron. Now that's 4 different things, and they do 4 different things. Or 4 different software packages. They all come together, they do 4 different things. RX has loads of stuff in it. And this is not something you're gonna wanna do right away, but at some point, if you find out that you make a lot of clicking sounds while you're speaking, you listen back and you notice a lot of clicks. Or a lady that comes in here and narrates audiobooks all the time, it's kind of gross sounding, she produces too much saliva. And so it's just always juicy kind of sounding or something, but it's bad. So she uses RX and she gets rid of that. It has all these stuff built in it that's preset, and you click it and it takes it out. Now you can adjust it if it took too much or not enough, but for the most part, the presets do a pretty good job. That's RX. Ozone, when you're finished with your project, you want to sound the best. You use Ozone to like set a final compression so that everything is smooth sounding, or I need to add EQ just up here or just down there. Nectar is a program that I use a lot. It contains a lot of things. It has an EQ, a limiter, a de-esser, a compressor, a bunch of things, a noise gate, all built into it. And it has presets, like I want to do this preset is for voiceover. So, or I want to do this preset is for like a male radio announcer or a female radio announcer. It has presets in it, but it can take care of your EQ, compression, de-essing, noise gate, and limiting all in one thing. You can do all that at one time. And you can usually buy it, and then there's another program called Neutron, and I don't use it, I don't know what all it does. But you can buy isotope elements for $49. And then later on, if you see that I really like this, you can upgrade that to more advanced packages, but you may never need to. And there again, if you have a program like Cubase, most all these things are built inside. So you don't necessarily have to buy anything. The noise suppressor is not. But the other things, the compressor, the EQ and all that, are already in there. You just have to add those to your track. So you say, oh, well, I want to add an EQ, so I want more bass. I want to add a compressor. I want to add this. You can do all that just one at a time. It's a little slower. And one thing that I have noticed is that Nectar has more controls, which allows you to do more things with it, so you can do a little better job at compressing. It has more, you can set the attack better, or you can set the release better, which I'm sure you know what that means, but you can do better at it with these plugins than what comes generally stock with the DAW that you buy. Okay, what kind of questions do we have at this point? That was probably real confusing on all that.
What resolution do you use to record?
48K.
How many bits? 24?
16-bit.
4816. Okay.
Yep. I use
Is that a
48K.
Is that pretty standard for uploads and whatnot?
It is for doing voiceover.
Okay.
48K 16-bit. You know, if you're doing music, you might wanna go 24-bit, you might wanna do 96K, but for all the voiceover, that's all I use. Okay, back to this, let's see. Recap. Quiet environment. Oh, I'm sorry, did anybody else have any other questions? Okay. Quiet environment equals a quiet recording. If you can't do quiet, plugins can help, like the noise suppression, quiet space, sound treatment, and I've got some prices here. You can buy a pop filter for about 20 bucks, a microphone around 75, give or take. You can go way up. A microphone stand you can get off Amazon for around $20. Audio cable is gonna run you about $20. If you use a USB mic, you don't have to have that. An audio interface, anywhere from $100 to thousands of dollars. If you use a USB microphone, you don't need that. A computer, you do need, and that just depends on the sky's the limit on that. If you have a computer, you could probably use it. You can buy a decent set of headphones for around $35. The audio recording software you can get free, or you can buy, like Cubase AI, I think it's $79 or $99, and other programs are around that price also. So for just about $300, you would have enough stuff to get started in VoiceOver. That would be hardware and software. I'm gonna turn these lights back up, and we'll do a little show and tell. My battery's getting weak. I'm gonna hit that and knock it off eventually. That's my goal. I'll be right back. Okay, so that's kind of the points that I have for our first class. Are there any other questions? All right.
One more
Yeah,
quick
go
one.
ahead.
Is there a reason that a homemade pop filter with the old pantyhose and wire hanger would not be good enough?
No, that will work
Is
just
that
fine.
okay? All right.
That will work just fine. In fact, we've had pop filters here in the past where we've redone them with pantyhose. You know, and all it is just a piece of stretchy material. So that works just fine. If you have a yarn, you know, they'll, yeah, embroidery hoop. That, when you buy some of these pop filters, that's all they are. They've got an embroidery hoop and they've got a thing where it screws together where they make a thing on a gooseneck to mount it in there, and it's just an embroidery hoop's all it is. And yeah, you can just take pantyhose and stretch it right over there, and that works just fine. So nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Okay, I'm gonna turn this off. I will create either PDF or email everyone a PDF or a Word document of everything that was on the screen tonight. And I'll listen to this and, excuse me, transcribe it. I'm not gonna re-record it, I don't think. But I'll transcribe that, so you'll have access to this as well. So, or I'll listen to this, if I can get the, I'll use noise suppression on this, get the noise out, and just use this maybe. I don't know, this doesn't record like this.